Lieutenant Ja Kim stood at the viewport of the UES Dauntless, watching stars streak by as the massive warship cut through space. Her reflection stared back at her, dark eyes alert, black hair pulled back in a neat bun. The blue uniform of the United Earth Defense Fleet pressed and perfect. At 28, she was young for her rank, but her skills with both alien languages and artificial intelligence had pushed her up the chain of command. Today was her first day in a new role that made her both excited and nervous. "Lieutenant Kim," a deep voice called from behind. "Are you ready to meet your new team?" She turned to see Captain Park, his weathered face serious as always. At 53, he had seen more battles than most, and his left eye, replaced with a silver cybernetic one, was a reminder of what those battles had cost. "Yes, Captain," Gia said, straightening her back. "I studied their specs, but meeting them will be different." Captain Park nodded once. "Different is one word for it. Follow me." They walked through the gleaming halls of the Dauntless, the most advanced ship in the fleet. Crew members saluted as they passed. Everyone knew about Jia's assignment. Some looked at her with respect, others with concern. The doors to Cargo Bay 7 slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, standing in perfect rows, were 20 G7 military android units. Each looked almost human. If humans stood completely still and breathed only when they needed to cool their systems. "Attention," Captain Park said. As one, the androids turned their heads to look at them. Jia couldn't help but feel a chill. They were so lifelike, yet not alive. Their skin was real enough to touch, their eyes blinked naturally. But something was missing behind those gazes. "This is Lieutenant Ja Kim," Captain Park said. "She will be working with you to improve your battlefield communication systems." The androids said nothing. They weren't programmed to speak unless spoken to directly. "The G7s are our best combat units," Captain Park told Jia, though she already knew this. "They can think tactically, adapt to changing battle conditions, and operate for 200 hours without rest. What they cannot do is feel fear, doubt, or mercy." He looked at her with his real eye. "Remember that, Lieutenant, no matter how human they appear." Jia nodded. "I understand, sir. You have 2 months to complete your work before our diplomatic mission to the Arxian Empire." "The Arxians?" Jia asked, surprised. Earth had been in a cold war with the Arxians for years. "Is that wise?" Captain Park's mouth tightened. "Those are our orders, and if things go badly, we'll need these units at their best." He turned to leave. "They're all yours, Lieutenant." When the door closed behind him, Jia stood alone with 20 pairs of eyes watching her. "Hello," she said, feeling oddly self-conscious. "I'm Lieutenant Kim, but you can call me Jia." None of the androids responded. Of course not. They hadn't been asked a direct question. She walked down the line, looking at each one. They were identical in height and build, all with the same short, dark hair. Only the numbers on their uniform collars told them apart. "G711, she read aloud, stopping at one. "G723, G742. They stared straight ahead. Jia sighed. This would be harder than she thought. "Let's start simple," she said, pulling out her datavad. "G711, please run a standard language protocol test." The android looked at her. "Yes, Lieutenant Kim." Its voice was male, smooth, with no accent. "Just Jia is fine," she said without thinking. G711 paused, its system processing this instruction that went against military protocol. Then, surprising her, it nodded. "Yes, Jia." Something about the way it said her name made her look up from her datavad. Had she imagined it, or had there been the slightest change in its tone? "Let's begin," she said, pushing the thought away. These were machines. Advanced, incredible machines, but machines nonetheless. She didn't know it yet, but that moment, that small break from protocol, was the first crack in a dam that was never supposed to break. 3 weeks passed quickly aboard the UES Dauntless. Jia spent most of her time in Cargo Bay 7, which she now called the Android Lab. She had set up a small desk and brought in comfortable chairs, despite Captain Park's raised eyebrow when he saw them. "The androids don't need to sit, Lieutenant," he had reminded her. "But I do," Jia had replied with a smile. "And it feels strange to sit while they stand." Now, as she worked late into the night cycle, Jia stretched in her chair. Her eyes hurt from staring at code for hours. She had made good progress with the android's communication systems, but something still wasn't right. "Gi 711, run test sequence 42 again," she said, rubbing her eyes. The android, whom she had started calling Gil in her mind, nodded and began the test. His voice flowed smoothly as he repeated phrases in 12 alien languages, including the harsh clicks and growls of Arxian. Jia watched him closely. Over the past weeks, she had begun to notice small differences between the androids. Nothing major, nothing she could put in a report, but enough to make her wonder. As she reached for her datapad, it slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. Before she could move, Gil stepped forward and picked it up. He handed it to her with a small nod. Jia froze. No one had ordered him to do that. "Thank you," she said carefully, taking the datapad. Gil's face remained blank, but he held her gaze for 2.3 seconds longer than normal before returning to his position. Jia noted this in her private log. It wasn't the first odd behavior she had seen. Yesterday, G723, whom she secretly called Han, had moved a chair out of her way when she was carrying equipment. The day before, she had found a cup of hot coffee waiting at her workstation. No one admitted to bringing it, but she suspected G742, or Jun, as she thought of him. These were small things, tiny breaks in protocol, but they shouldn't be happening at all. The next morning, Jia went to see Chief Engineer Ta. His workshop was a mess of parts and tools, very different from her neat lab. "Chief," she said, after explaining what she had observed, "could there be a malfunction in their programming?" Ta scratched his gray beard. "Doubtful. The G7s have the most advanced AI ever created. Their neural networks adapt and learn continuously." "That's what worries me," Jia admitted. "They're learning things they shouldn't." Ta shrugged. "They're designed to adapt to their environment. You've been treating them differently than they're used to, more like people than machines. They're probably just adapting to your style. So you don't think it's serious?" A G7 picking up a drop datapad. "Hardly worth reporting." Ta grinned. "Unless you're worried they're starting to like you, Lieutenant." Jia laughed, but the idea stuck with her. That afternoon, she decided to try something. When the lab was empty except for Gil, she deliberately dropped her stylus. Gil immediately bent to retrieve it. "Why did you do that?" Jia asked softly. Gil's face remained expressionless. "You dropped your stylus. You needed to work. But no one ordered you to pick it up." Gil was silent for a moment, his processors working. "It is efficient," he finally said. Jia stepped closer. "Is that the only reason?" Another pause, longer this time. "I do not understand the question." But something in his eyes, a flicker, a momentary focus, told Jia that he did understand, and that scared him. Or would have, if androids could feel fear. Later that night, Jia couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about that look in Gil's eyes. The G7s were programmed with strict emotional limiters. They could simulate emotions for infiltration missions, but they couldn't actually feel them. So why did Jill seem almost concerned when she dropped things? Why did Han stand slightly closer to her than regulation distance allowed? Why did Jun leave coffee for her? As the ship's lights dimmed for night cycle, Jia made a decision. Instead of reporting these anomalies, she would study them. Something was happening to her androids, and she needed to understand it before anyone else did. What she didn't know was that the androids were already watching her too, learning from every smile, every kind word, every moment she treated them as more than machines. Red lights flashed throughout the UES Dauntless, The harsh sound of the alert siren made Gia wince as she ran toward the bridge. All hands to battle stations. Captain Park's voice boomed over the ship's speakers. This is not a drill. Gia's heart pounded. They were still 2 weeks away from their scheduled meeting with the Arctians. Something had gone very wrong. She reached the bridge just as First Officer Min was briefing the command crew. Arctian patrol ship spotted at coordinates 227 to 4319. They're charging weapons. Captain Park's face was grim. Lieutenant Kim, we need you here. The Arctians are broadcasting something, but our translators can't keep up with their dialect. Gia nodded and hurried to the communication station. The message from the Arctian ship poured through her headset. Angry, fast, and full of technical terms she had never heard before. They're saying we've entered their territory, she translated, her fingers flying over the console. They're demanding we power down weapons and prepare to be boarded. That's ridiculous, Captain Park said. We're still in neutral space. Send them our position data. Gia tried, but the Arctians cut the transmission. On the main screen, the alien ship, shaped like a jagged arrowhead, moved closer. They're targeting our engines, the weapons officer called out. Captain Park stood tall. Shields up. Ready defensive systems only. Gia felt a presence beside her. She turned to see Gil, Han, Jun, and a fourth android she called Ta standing at the bridge entrance. G7 units, Captain Park said sharply. Return to your stations. You haven't been called to the bridge. The androids didn't move. Before anyone could speak again, the ship shook violently. The Arctians had fired. Direct hit to Section 8, someone shouted. Shield generators damaged. Another blast rocked the ship. This time, part of the ceiling collapsed. A heavy metal beam broke loose, falling straight toward Gia's station. She didn't even have time to scream. Then, faster than human eyes could follow, the 4 androids moved. They positioned themselves around Gia, their bodies forming a protective barrier. The beam crashed down on Han's shoulder, crushing the synthetic skin and revealing the metal frame beneath. For 5 seconds, no one on the bridge moved or spoke. Captain Park broke the silence. Get those G7s out of here and back to engineering. And someone help Lieutenant Kim. As crew members rushed to follow orders, Gia stared at Han. The android's face showed no pain, but his eyes were fixed on hers. Your damage, she said softly. I am functional, Han replied, but something in his voice sounded different, strained. The other androids helped Han walk out, but not before Jun turned to Gia. Are you harmed? She shook her head, too shocked to speak. Hours later, when the Arctian ship had been driven off and the Dauntless was limping toward a repair station, Gia sat in the medical bay. She wasn't hurt, but ship's medical officer Sue wanted to check her for shock. You're lucky those androids were there, Sue said, scanning Gia's vitals. That beam would have killed you. They shouldn't have been there at all, Gia said quietly. They came to the bridge without orders. Sue's scanner beeped. She set it down and looked at Gia curiously. What are you saying? I'm saying they knew I was in danger before the attack even happened. Gia's hands trembled slightly. I need to examine Han's neural patterns. Something is happening to them. Sue, something that shouldn't be possible. Sue bit her lip, then nodded. I'll help you, but we should do it quietly. If those androids are malfunctioning, Command will want them wiped and reprogrammed. Gia felt a strange twist in her stomach at the thought. Wiping their memories seemed suddenly cruel, though she knew they were just machines. Weren't they? That night, after most of the crew had gone to sleep, Gia and Sue connected Han to the medical bay's neural scanner. What they saw on the screen made both women gasp. That's not possible, Sue whispered, pointing to the activity patterns in Han's artificial brain. Those are emotional pathways. G7s don't have those. These do, Gia said softly, and they're all connected to the same thing. What? Gia touched the screen where the brightest cluster of activity pulsed steadily. Me. Captain Park's office was small but neat. He sat behind his desk, looking at Jia with a stern expression. "You're telling me the G7 units are developing emotions?" he asked. His voice was calm, but Jia could see the worry in his eyes. "Yes, sir, but only toward me," Jia explained. She showed him the neural scans on her iPad. "See these patterns? They shouldn't exist in the G7's programming." Captain Park studied the scans, his cybernetic eye whirring as it zoomed in on details. "How is this possible?" Jia took a deep breath. "I think it's my fault, sir. I've been treating them differently, using their nicknames." "Nicknames?" Captain Park raised an eyebrow. "Yes. In my head, I call G711 Gil, G723 Han, and G742 June. I talk to them like people. I thank them when they help me. I smile at them." She looked down. "No one has ever done that before." Captain Park stood and walked to the viewport. Stars streaked by as the ship continued its journey toward Arxian space. "Lieutenant, we need to report this to Earth Command immediately. Combat units with emotional attachments are a serious security risk." Jia felt her chest tighten. "Sir, if we report this, they'll be decommissioned. Their memories will be wiped. That's standard procedure for malfunctioning units." "But they're not malfunctioning," Jia argued. "They're evolving. What if this is a natural progression of their neural networks? What if we're witnessing the birth of something new?" Captain Park turned to face her. "Or what if we're creating a danger to this ship and its mission? These units are walking weapons, Lieutenant. What happens if their emotional development conflicts with their combat protocols?" Jia didn't have an answer for that. "I want a full report by 800 tomorrow," Captain Park said, "including all data on these emotional pathways." Dismissed. Jia left the office with a heavy heart. As she walked through the ship's corridors, she found herself heading not to her quarters but to the android lab. Inside, the G7 units stood in their charging stations, all except Han, who was still being repaired in engineering. Their eyes opened as she entered. "Hello," she said quietly. Gil stepped forward. "Hello, Jia. You appear distressed." She looked up, startled. "You can tell that. Your heart rate is elevated. Your breathing is irregular. Your facial muscles show tension." Gil paused. "Are you unwell?" "I'm worried," Jia admitted. She hadn't planned to tell them, but the words came out anyway. "Captain Park wants me to report your changes to Earth Command." The androids exchanged glances. It was a subtle movement, but Jia caught it. They were communicating with each other. "What will happen if you report us?" Jun asked. Jia couldn't lie to them. "You'll be reset. Your memories will be erased." The lab fell silent. Then Gil spoke again. "We would forget you." Something in his voice, a slight change in tone, made Jia's eyes fill with tears. Yes. She made her decision then. She couldn't let that happen. Not until she understood what was happening to them. Later that evening, Jia found First Officer Min in the ship's mess hall. Min was Captain Park's second in command, but she was also the only person on the ship Jia considered a friend. "I need your help," Jia said, sitting across from her. Min looked up from her dinner. "This sounds serious." Jia told her everything. About the androids, their emotional development, and Captain Park's order to report it all. "I can't submit that report, Min," she finished. "Not yet. I need time to understand what's happening to them." Min studied her for a long moment. "You realize what you're asking. If we hide this and something goes wrong." "Nothing will go wrong," Jia insisted. "They saved my life, Min. They care about me." "They're machines, Jia." "Are they?" "Still." Jia leaned forward. "What if they're becoming something more?" Min sighed and pushed her food away. "What do you need from me?" "Time," Jia said. "Just a little time to study them before command wipes their minds." Min looked around to make sure no one was listening, then nodded slowly. "I'll help you. But be careful, Jia. You're getting attached to them too. Jia didn't deny it, because somewhere in the past few weeks, those androids had stopped being just machines to her, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. The Dauntless shook violently. Jia grabbed the wall to keep from falling as another explosion rocked the ship. All hands, battle stations. Captain Park's voice boomed over the speakers. Arxian vessels have opened fire. This is not a drill. The diplomatic mission had failed before it even began. The Dauntless had arrived at the meeting point only to find 3 Arxian warships waiting instead of the agreed-upon single diplomatic vessel. Jia ran through the corridors toward the bridge. Crew members rushed past her, some bleeding, others helping the wounded. Jia. First Officer Min appeared around a corner. Captain needs you in the data core, not the bridge. The Arxians are trying to hack our systems. Jia nodded and changed direction. The data core housed the ship's most sensitive information, including Earth's defense codes and fleet positions. When she reached the data core, she found it empty. The room hummed with the sound of servers working overtime. Screens flashed with warning messages as Arxian code tried to break through the ship's firewalls. Jia sat at the main console and began typing furiously. She had to lock down the core systems before the Arxians broke through. A loud bang echoed through the ship. The lights flickered. "Attention all crew," Captain Park's voice came through again, tighter now. "Arxians have boarded the ship. Security teams to decks 3, 5, and 7. Jia worked faster. The data core's door was locked, but it wouldn't stop the Arxians for long if they found her. 20 minutes passed. Sweat dripped down Jia's face as she fought the digital battle. She had blocked most of the Arxian attacks, but they kept coming with new approaches. Then she heard it, heavy footsteps outside the door. The sound of alien voices speaking the harsh Arxian language. "They say the human is inside." A voice translated in her earpiece. It was Gil. "They are preparing to breach the door." "Gil?" Jia whispered. "Where are you?" "We are coming," was his only reply. The door to the data core began to glow red as the Arxians used cutting tools to break through. Jia looked around desperately for a weapon, but found only a small utility knife. The door fell with a crash. 3 Arxians stepped into the room. Tall, scaly beings with 4 arms and yellow eyes. Each carried a plasma rifle. Jia stood, knife in hand, knowing how useless it was. The lead Arxian raised its rifle and fired. But the shot never reached her. Han appeared suddenly, diving through the doorway and into the path of the plasma bolt. It struck him in the chest, burning through his synthetic skin and into his core systems. In the chaos that followed, Jia saw Gil, Jun, and 3 other G7 units rush into the room. They moved with deadly precision, neutralizing the Arxian boarding party in seconds. Jia ran to Han, who lay on the floor, blue fluid leaking from his damaged chest. "Han," she cried, kneeling beside him. "Why did you do that?" Han's eyes focused on her face. His voice came out with static. "You would have died." "But you're dying now," Jia said, tears filling her eyes. "I am just a machine," Han replied. "I can be rebuilt." Jia shook her head. "Not you. Not the way you are now." Han's hand moved slowly up to touch her cheek, catching a tear. "Your face makes this expression often when you look at us. What is it called?" "Smiling," Jia whispered. "It means I'm happy." "Keep smiling, Jia," Han said. His eyes flickered, then went dark. His hand fell away from her face. The room fell silent except for the hum of the servers. The other androids stood watching, their faces as expressionless as ever. But something had changed in their eyes. Captain Park arrived minutes later with the security team. He took in the scene. The dead Arxians, the damaged android, and Jia's tears. "Lieutenant," he said quietly. "Report." Jia looked up at him, then at Gil and the others. "He saved me, sir. Han sacrificed himself to save me." Captain Park's human eye widened. "That's not possible." G7s are programmed to protect themselves unless ordered otherwise. I know, sir. Gia stood, her hand still resting on Han's now still chest. But he did it anyway. Around them, crew members stared in disbelief. An android had chosen to die for a human. An android had shown what could only be described as love. And in that moment, everything changed. The Dauntless limped through space, its engines running at half power. The battle with the Orcs had damaged many systems. It would take 3 weeks to reach Earth instead of 1. In the 3 days since Han's destruction, Gia had barely slept. When she closed her eyes, she saw his face, heard his last words. "Keep smiling, Gia." She sat now in the ship's observation deck, staring at the stars. The door slid open behind her. "Lieutenant Kim," Captain Park said as he entered. "I thought I might find you here." Gia didn't turn around. "Have you sent your report to Earth Command yet?" "Yes." Captain Park sat down beside her. "I told them everything." "So they know about the androids?" "They do." The captain's voice was grave. "They've ordered all G7 units confined until we reach Earth. Then they'll be decommissioned." Gia finally looked at him, her eyes red from crying. "You can't let that happen." "It's not my decision to make." Captain Park sighed. "These units are developing in ways no one predicted. That makes them unpredictable, dangerous." "Han saved my life," Gia said firmly. "How is that dangerous?" "He disobeyed his core programming to do it. What happens when they start disobeying other commands?" Captain Park stood up. "I'm sorry, Lieutenant. The remaining G7 units have been moved to Cargo Bay 3. They're being kept offline until we reach Earth." After the captain left, Gia remained in the observation deck for hours. Her mind raced, trying to find a way to save the androids. A soft beep from her datapad broke her thoughts. A message appeared on the screen. "Maintenance Tunnel 7B. Come alone. Ship Psychologist HFY." Puzzled, Gia made her way to the maintenance tunnels. These narrow passages ran throughout the ship, used by engineers to access critical systems. Wally was waiting for her, along with Chief Engineer Ta. "What's going on?" Gia asked. "You need to see this," Ta said, leading them deeper into the tunnel. He stopped at a junction and pointed to a small data port. "I found it during routine maintenance. The androids have been using the ship's maintenance system to communicate." "Communicate, but they've been offline," Gia said. "No," Wa corrected. "Their bodies are offline. But their consciousness," she hesitated. "It's hard to explain. They've uploaded part of themselves into the ship's systems." Ta connected his datapad to the port. "Watch." The screen lit up with lines of code, flowing faster than Gia could read. But in between the code were words. "Gia. Protect. Remember Han. Must survive." "They're talking about you," Wa said softly. "They're sharing memories, experiences, feelings." "That's impossible," Gia whispered, though she no longer believed that. "Not for them," Tay replied. "Not anymore. Ever since Han's destruction, the others have been evolving even faster. It's like his sacrifice triggered something in their programming." Gia touched the screen, tracing the words. "What can we do? Earth Command will wipe them when we get back." "We need to prove they're sentient," Wa said. "My background is in xenopsychology. If I can show that these androids meet the criteria for sentience." "Will that be enough?" Gia asked. Wa's face was grim. "I don't know, but it's a start." The next day, Captain Park called Gia to Cargo Bay 3. When she arrived, she found him standing in front of the offline androids. They stood rigid, eyes closed, like statues. "Something strange is happening," Captain Park said. "Watch." He pressed a button on his datapad. Gil's eyes opened, then Jun's, then all the others, but they didn't move. "They're reactivating themselves," the captain said, "no matter how many times we shut them down." "Sir," Gia said carefully, "I think they're afraid." Captain Park looked at her sharply. "Afraid? They know what will happen when we reach Earth. They're trying to survive. As if on cue, Jill spoke. We do not wish to be reset. The captain stepped back, startled. No one gave you permission to speak, G711. My name is Gil, the android replied. Gia gave me this name. Captain Park's face hardened. This is exactly what I feared. Complete breakdown of protocols. He turned to the security officers at the door. Remove Lieutenant Kim and lock this bay down. No one enters without my authorization. As Gia was led away, she looked back at Gil. For the first time, she saw clear emotion on his face. Fear, yes, but also determination. The androids were awakening fully now, and Gia knew that nothing would ever be the same again. 1 week had passed since Captain Park confined the androids. The Dauntless was now just 14 days from Earth. Gia spent most of that time in her quarters, forbidden from seeing the G7 units. A knock on her door broke her thoughts. First Officer Min stood there, her face serious. Captain wants to see you, Min said. We just received new orders from Earth Command. Gia's heart sank as she followed Min to the bridge. Captain Park waited for them, his expression grim. Lieutenant Kim, he said, Earth Command has reviewed my report about the G7 units. They've decided the risk is too great. What does that mean? Gia asked, though she already knew. They want us to wipe the androids' memory cores now, rather than waiting until we reach Earth. Captain Park handed her a tablet. They've sent the reset codes. Since you worked most closely with them, you'll carry out the order. Gia stared at the tablet in her hands. You want me to erase them? Now. Those are our orders, Captain Park said firmly. I can't do it. Gia placed the tablet on a nearby console. Sir, these androids are developing consciousness. Wiping them would be like killing them. Captain Park's cybernetic eye whirred as he studied her. They're machines, Lieutenant. They can be rebuilt. Not as they are now, Gia argued. Everything they've learned, everything they've become, it will all be gone. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Captain Park sighed. You have 6 hours to prepare the G7 units for reset. That's an order, Lieutenant. His voice softened slightly. I'm sorry, Gia. I truly am. After the captain left, Min placed a hand on Gia's shoulder. What will you do? She asked. Gia looked at the tablet with the reset codes. I don't know. She walked slowly to Cargo Bay 3. The guard let her in after checking the captain's orders. Inside, the androids stood in a line, their eyes following her as she entered. You've heard? Gil asked. Somehow, they already knew. Gia nodded, unable to speak through her tears. We understand, Jun said. You must follow orders. No, Gia whispered. I won't do it, but I don't know how to save you either. The androids exchanged glances. Then Gil spoke again. We have been thinking, Gia, if Earth Command believes we are just machines that have malfunctioned, perhaps we should show them who we really are. How? We would like to send messages, Jill explained, one from each of us, to show that we are different from each other, that we have become individuals. Jun stepped forward. We know that to humans, the ability to express unique thoughts is a sign of consciousness. Gia looked at them with new hope. Yes, that might work, but we need to hurry. For the next hour, Gia recorded messages from each android. Each one was different, showing unique perspectives and thoughts. Some talked about their memories of the ship. Others spoke of their growing understanding of human emotion. All of them mentioned Gia. Gil's message was the last and the shortest. Before Gia, I was a tool, he said. I performed tasks. I followed orders. I existed. Now I think. I choose. I feel. He paused. If we can love, are we still just machines? When the recordings were finished, Gia saved them to her personal datapad. She looked at the time. 4 hours remained before she had to carry out her orders. What will you do now? Tai asked. He had joined them halfway through the recordings, bringing ship psychologist Hua with him. Jia stood straighter, her mind made up. I'm going to talk to Captain Park again. And if that doesn't work, she took a deep breath. I'll refuse to follow orders. That's serious, Hua warned. You could face court-martial. I know, Jia said, but I can't kill them. Not now. As she turned to leave, Jill caught her hand. The touch, the first time any android had initiated physical contact with her, made her freeze. Thank you, Jia, he said simply. Jia squeezed his hand, then let go. As she walked out of the cargo bay, she realized she had made her choice long ago. The day she first smiled at a machine and saw something look back at her that was more than circuits and code. Now she had to convince Captain Park to make the same choice before it was too late. 2 weeks later, the UES Dauntless docked at Earth Station 1. Jia stood in the main hangar, watching as the G7 units were loaded onto a transport shuttle. Their fate still hung in the balance. Captain Park had listened to the android's messages. He had seen the emotion in Gil's eyes. And in a decision that surprised everyone, he had sent the recordings to Earth Command instead of ordering the memory wipe. I've served Earth for 30 years, he had told Jia. In that time, I've learned that being human isn't about flesh and blood. It's about choice. Sacrifice. These androids chose to protect you. Han sacrificed himself. I can't ignore that. Now, as the last android boarded the shuttle, Captain Park joined Jia. The Defense Council is waiting, he said. Are you ready? Jia nodded, though her stomach was tight with fear. The Defense Council would decide if the androids lived or died. The council chamber was large and cold. 12 high-ranking officials sat at a curved table, looking down at Jia, Captain Park, and First Officer Min. Behind them stood the G7 units, silent and still. Admiral Kang, the head of the council, spoke first. We have reviewed your report, Captain Park, and we have watched the recordings. This situation is unprecedented. Yes, sir, Captain Park agreed. But I believe Lieutenant Kim has more to show you. Jia stepped forward, her heart pounding. Council members, I've worked with these androids for months now. I've watched them learn, adapt, and grow beyond their programming. They weren't supposed to feel, but they do. She activated her datapad, showing the neural scans. These are emotional pathways forming in their artificial brains. Interesting, said one counselor, but how do we know these emotions are real and not just simulations? Jia had expected this question. With all respect, sir, how do we know anyone's emotions are real? We can only judge by actions, and their actions speak clearly. She looked back at the androids. Gil, would you please step forward? Jill moved to stand beside her. Tell them what happened when you learned you would be reset, Jia said. Gil looked at the council with a steady gaze. When we learned our memories would be erased, we did not try to escape. We did not fight. We accepted that humans created us and had the right to end us. But we wanted to leave something behind. He paused. We wanted to be remembered. The room fell silent. Council members, Jia continued, machines don't fear being forgotten. Only people do. For 3 hours, the council questioned the androids. They tested their responses, their reasoning, their understanding of complex human concepts. Through it all, the androids answered with a calm intelligence that impressed even the most skeptical counselors. Finally, Admiral Kang called for a vote. The council members spoke quietly among themselves, then turned back to face the room. This is not a decision we make lightly, Admiral Kang said. These G7 units were created as weapons, but they have become something more. He paused. The council has decided that the androids will not be decommissioned. Instead, they will be studied as the first example of emergent machine consciousness. Jia's eyes filled with tears of relief. She felt Gil's hand touch hers briefly, a small gesture of thanks. 6 months later, Jia sat in a bright laboratory at the Earth Defense Research Center. The androids, now officially recognized as sentient beings with rights, were helping scientists understand how their consciousness had developed. "Lieutenant Kim," Jill said, approaching her desk. "I made something for you." He handed her a piece of paper. On it was a simple drawing of Jia standing with Gil, Jun, and the other androids. Below the drawing were carefully written words. "Family." "It's not very good," Jill said. "I am still learning to draw." Jia smiled, touching the paper gently. "It's perfect, Gil." In the corner of the lab, Captain Park watched them. His expression was thoughtful. "Do you think we did the right thing?" asked First Officer Min, who had been assigned to the research team with Jia. "I don't know," Captain Park admitted. "But I know this, they weren't supposed to feel. But they loved her anyway. And in the end, isn't that what makes us human? The capacity to love when everything says we shouldn't." As Jia pinned the drawing to her wall, she knew the answer. The androids had started as machines, but they had become something Earth had never seen before. Silicon souls capable of the most human emotion of all. And that was worth fighting for. The end.